Hello, everyone. This is Fadi again, and I want to welcome you back to a continuation of our fascinating video series where we are comparing the effects of Islam and Christianity, or as we wanted to say, the harms of Islam and the benefits of Christianity concerning topics like child marriage. We have covered so far the physical harm and the mental harm that comes out of a topic like child marriage. But today we're going to take another look at social harm or social problems that will result from child marriage. With us here virtually in our studios, our dear brother Michael Jones with Inspiring Philosophy. Michael, thank you again for joining us, and thank you for this wonderful research that you've been doing. And today, of course, we want to continue with the discussion about child marriage, except we're going to take the different angle now of focusing our attention on social problems. What do we have about that?
Yeah, so when a girl is married very young, we see a lot of social issues, not just physical and mental harm, but social issues. So as I noted in the first episode, that the rationale for child marriage is that they think it'll decrease premarital sex. We marry a girl young, it'll stop fornication, sleeping or having sex outside of marriage. We show that's just the research doesn't support that. But what actually we see a very interesting or really horrible negative effect from child marriage is that we see an increase in STDs. So this study, Reproductive and Sexual Health Consequences of Child Marriage, a review of the literature, they looked at studies that were published between 1946 and 2018. And the results say this. They say child marriage as a result of poverty has many adverse consequences on reproductive and sexual health of girls. These include death during childbirth, physical and sexual violence, isolation, depression, cervical cancer, and a risk of sexually transmitted diseases. Teen pregnant women are at a higher risk of preterm birth as well as neonatal death more than other women. So one of the issues they note is that there's an increase in STDs. If child marriage was supposed to solve fornication issues, why do we see girls developing or getting more STDs if they've been married young? Well, it's because they're married to these older men and they don't have bargaining power because they're still a child. And these men go out and they sleep around with prostitutes and other women, and then they bring those STDs back into the relationship. Women that are married older, they have more bargaining power. They're able to negotiate better with their husbands and keep their sexual appetites under control. Whereas you marry a child, and it's more like being a parent than actually being in a marriage. And so they can't rein in their husband's sexual appetite. So we see them bringing more STDs in. So it's not this idea that child marriage is going to solve fornication. It seems it's going to make it worse. The husbands are going to run around, sleep around all they want. So if we care about ending fornication, which Muslims do, they should be arguing against child marriage, not promoting it.
That's right. And even if the argument is like, no, it's not the husband, it is the girl, it's herself who is apparently sleeping around, that proves the point immediately that child marriage did not prevent her from doing something like this. I'm just thinking outside the box right now. I mean, trying to anticipate an argument or a pushback. What other social harms or problems also that we can address concerning child marriage?
Well, as I noted in this review, we see an increase of intimate partner violence, basically domestic abuse. Girls are far more likely to be abused by their husbands than women in their 20s. So this has been shown in study after study after study, and I got multiple studies showing this. But in this review, they note that girls are far more likely to be victims of domestic violence over women in their 20s. Because again, an older woman has more negotiating power. She's much better able to defend herself than a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old. So they note in this paper that if you're married young, you're very likely to be abused by your husband. And that's horrible as well. There was another paper done recently. This was just done in 2012. Association between girl-child marriage and intimate partner violence in sub-Saharan Africa. Insights from a multi-country analysis of demographic and health surveys. And they note health survey from over 28,000 young girls shows that, the result shows you're far more likely to be emotionally, physically, and sexually abused by your husband if you were married as a child. So not only do we see an increase in STDs, we see these girls also being abused. And that's horrible as well. And they note in the research, like the narrative review I cited, like the other study I cited, why is this going on? Well, they note that, the girls in these situations, there's an extremely uneven power dynamics between the males and the females. mainly because of their age gaps. The females who lack decision-making abilities constantly deal with harassment by their husbands and in-laws and are socially isolated. So it just results from the relationship itself. If you marry a child, you're not going to have a real good mental relationship with that. And you can lash out in anger at times as a man. And so we need to prevent that if we see that happening throughout the world. So it's not good for children to be married to older men because it leads naturally to intimate partner violence. And this is why this child marriage needs to be outlawed globally. This is another reason.
Right. What about other areas like divorce, for instance? Is that something that prevalent when it comes to child marriage?
Yeah, well, Muslims argue they want a society that has low divorce. And I think we as Christians agree. We want less divorce. Well, there was a study done by Institute for Family Studies, and they wrote an article on it called Want to Avoid Divorce, Way to Get Married, but Not Too Long. And they note the best age to get married is actually going to be around the age of 25. If you marry much younger, you have a much higher rate of divorce. Same with what you see at over the age of 40. If you wait to 40, you have a much higher rate of divorce as well. But they note that additional tests reveal that the relation seems to function more or less the same for everyone, male or female, less or more education, religious or irreligious, intact or non-intact family origin, and limited versus extensive sexual history prior to marriage. So they note if you're basically being married between the ages of 10 and 18, you had a much higher rate of divorce than if you're going to marry closer to the age of 25. Now, that makes sense from a psychological understanding because your brain is not fully developed. I was a different person when I was 18 versus when I was in my 20s. But, once your prefrontal cortex is fully developed, you're more of who you have developed into. So we should expect that around when that time that's fully developed, which is around the age of 25, that's the best time to get married. Why? Well, because that's when your brain is fully developed. You've sort of just settled into who you are. You've not got settled in your ways mostly, and it'd be the perfect time to start developing a long-term relationship with a spouse. But being married young has a much higher rate of increased divorce. CDC reports similar findings as well. So why would Muslims promote child marriage if they want a society that has less divorce? They should be encouraging girls and boys to wait until they're in their 20s, because that's going to decrease divorce. It makes far more sense to just agree with the West that child marriage should be outlawed because of the mental, physical, and social problems it causes.
Right. I mean, out of curiosity, does even child marriage prevent polygamy, for instance, or minimize polygamy, meaning the man going to marry even another wife after that? Because in the case of Muhammad, even though Aisha was his second wife after the death of Khadija, he went on a marriage spree after that.
Yeah, there's absolutely no evidence that child marriage would reduce polygamy, which is also harmful, which we can talk about later. But yeah, of course not, because the girls, the child brides, have no bargaining power as children. They're not adults yet. And again, I remember as a child, you didn't have bargaining power with adults because your brain is not fully developed. You respect older adults. You do what they tell you to. Children just are not there yet. And so we see women that are married have far better bargaining power, able to protect themselves from STDs, intimate partner violence, than girls are. And this is why we constantly see these correlations. And so child marriage just needs to be outlawed across the board for all the harm it causes. And if Muslim men love and care about their daughters, they should not put their daughters into these harmful situations. They should do everything they possibly can to prevent their daughters from being married until at least 18. And that just is supported by countless research on this.
Wonderful. Anything else, Michael, you want to talk about in terms of the social problems as associated with child marriage?
Well, as we know, when a girl gets married as a child, she's less likely to be able to finish, high school education. And that we have numerous research shows education just increases the quality of life for girls and boys across the board. This is just obvious to anybody who understands basic science here. And when you get married as a child, you're very unlikely to actually complete your high school education. And that is going to reduce quality of life. It's associated with increased levels of depression later in life. So we should want girls to be able to get a high school education at least before ever even thinking about marriage. And that is going to lead to better quality for their children. They're going to develop better social skills, better better mental ability in raising children and living a full quality and flourishing life. So absolutely, there's all these benefits to waiting till at least minimally 18 before a girl's married.
And I would agree, at least just finishing education would allow her to be better equipped as a mother, as a parent, can help the children when they go to school. I mean, I tell you, man, I mean, my wife is the brain behind the operation at our home in helping my kids with their homeworks and other things. That doesn't mean I cannot help them. But you know what? As a parent herself, she does an excellent job in doing so. Therefore, I can do certain things, she can do other things, but she is an active participant in the process. Now, if she didn't go to school and if she was married young, how would she know how to parent them correctly, how she can train them correctly, how she can talk to them about behavior, if that's the case? You know what I mean? I mean, just behaving appropriately in society. So all of these are just common sense issues that without even having a research to back it up or science to back it up, it just, from a cultural standpoint, from an observation standpoint, one would be puzzled by how can something like this be permitted. And I like what you said earlier, that child marriage should be banned globally. I mean, whether Islamic country or non-Islamic country, because of just its scientific evidence-proof damage that results from that. Well, next time, brother, I want us to really venture into polygamy, if possible. I want us to talk a little bit more about that. Is that something you have any research also to support?
Absolutely.
Wonderful, wonderful. Again, with us here, our distinguished guest, Michael Jones, with inspiring philosophy. I hope everyone has been enjoying the massive amount of research material that he's been sharing with us, which is really a taste of things, because we've been rushing through this. And I told Michael that at some point I'm going to bring him in to do live streams with me where we're going to dissect these things one point at a time, simply because there is a lot of data out there that can debunk any of these alleged claims of the benefit of child marriage. I think all of we have so far we've concluded from every single episode we've done on this topic is that there is nothing good that comes out of child marriage. Next time we will turn our attention to polygamy, which we have already alluded to, by the way, in talking about child marriage, but this time we'll focus our discussions on research and science when it comes to polygamy. Until next time, everyone, have a blessed day.